And if everything goes well, we should be live now. So, hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Everything Outside Code. And today we have a wonderful guest with us. I have Ymir. We co-organize Oslo's fastest growing AI meetup, as Jürgen said last 2 weeks. And he's building amazing stuff. And as usual, today we're going to go over all the cool stuff Ymir does outside code. So everything outside software engineering, from product development to all the marketing bits, sales bits, and just about any other thing. And if you're listening, if you have questions, just put them in the chat. We'll see them and we will take them. But the most, we're just going to have fun for the next 30, 40 minutes. So Ymir, what's up?
It's going good, man. I can cover basically a quick background just so people know a bit about who I am. I'm a self-taught programmer who basically went straight into corporate life and worked there for a bit and quite enjoyed it actually. But with everything happening in AI, I thought it was better to go and build something where you can kind of work more closely with all emerging technologies. And that's how we met, through the AI meetup and through starting to organize that. And for me, it's just a really exciting time, right? You can see technology really moving as quickly as it's ever had.
Yeah, that's right. When you say came from the corporate world, I don't think I heard that part. Where was that? How did all that happen?
Yeah, so I worked. Actually, I came from a programming bootcamp, so not quite self-taught. Programming bootcamp called SALT, School of Applied Technology, and they have this really intensive program where they essentially teach you programming in about 3 months, and it's almost like a reality TV show. Just it's not going anywhere, right? It's not being aired anywhere. The concept is that you have really long days where you just program with your team, and every week you have exams. And basically, through this process, you get really immersed into programming, and from there, it turned out that I was quite talented, and Visma, who's the bigger ERP system in Norway, they ended up picking me up, and after about 8 months, I became tech lead for the project that I was on, mostly because I was just sitting and programming all day, every day, right?
Yeah. Wow. It's like the Visma, right? Like the Visma we know. That's amazing, man. And it must take some guts to live there and decide to get back in the streets and build something,
No, definitely. I think this is one of the things that is really incredible about Visma in particular, is how they're able to organize themselves in such a good way. And it's one thing that they say internally, which I think is quite true, is that they don't want to be one whale, they want to be many smaller fishes.
So basically, do they do that through the people that go through Visma?
It's through how they organize the companies. So it's built up of over 200 companies, and that way, each of the companies are bringing something to the table, and kind of both the developers, but also I'm guessing a lot on the business side as well. They're able to collaborate with each other. So I worked in a company with not that many tech people, but I still had access to all the same developer resources as all the other people in Visma, which was about 5,000 or 6,000 developers, right? So if I had any trouble with something, I could actually ask someone who worked on that near recently, and there's a really good structure for it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. For a company that big with 6,000 developers, I can imagine how big the rest of the organization is. Fast forward from Visma to figuring out that AI is the next, it's the next thing. It's the next, I would say, maybe not frontier for technology. It's one of them. You decided to build something else. What did you try? And then how did you get to what you're working on currently?
So we are since I left Visma, I worked with a lot of different people and tried to just really figure out what can be done with AI today and kind of where things are going. And it means that like the first project that we tried to do with AI was based on like horoscope chatbots, because we thought that if it's one like space that would be really changed by AI, we thought it would be kind of these chat interface solutions. And we thought that everyone in existence would be working on support over AI, while like the kind of niche markets like horoscope chats or like psychic advice would be places where there would be quite a blue ocean, where the people who usually run the kind of horoscope or psychic chats are usually not the most technical people and would be kind of late adopters to AI technology. Which was like the interesting theory about it. So we built it in about a week or something. And it was really astonishing to us because we ran some Facebook ads on it, and like straight away we had like 20 initially, and then 40 minutes like average user sessions, meaning people were just like, if they got onto the site and started chatting, the bot that we had built was so captivating to people that they were just stuck there. And we had really interesting metrics for retention as well. However, it's a really strange industry where people are really willing to invest their time, but we just couldn't get it to convert high enough for us to think it was an interesting opportunity. And also, it was not quite the blue ocean that we thought, because we realized that all the competitions or like all the competitors in that space had already implemented AI fully, which was another interesting one. But yeah, we kind of tested a bunch of different ideas to try to see what can be built and what could be interesting. And what me and my now co-founder Emil landed on was that essentially sales is really, really hard. And every single business needs sales. And it's both something that he has kind of experienced with his family company, but also something that I on my end has seen quite close hand, both by being my own like consulting firm and being the one-man army there where I need to do the sales and everything myself. But also just any business, they have some type of problem with sales, or they would like to be better at sales. So that's kind of where we started. And then we started building up and kind of trying to do as many customer interviews as humanly possible. And that's how we basically got started on working on things.
That's interesting. So from going from AI on horoscopes, I wouldn't think, I mean, I see like horoscopes on social media, but I wouldn't expect that there was that much interest in it and getting that much engagement in like on the tool. But then the problem became monetization, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like getting the right business model out of it.
Yeah. And when me and Matthias, who was my partner on it, were working on it, we quite quickly understood that we really didn't understand the ICP either, let's say. And it's just a market that we just had no business being in because we did not understand it.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I guess someone else, for you, the benefit was you figured out another market you needed to do better in, or another user segment you needed to serve. Well, I guess for someone else, listening, they could just pick up like, horoscope AI and build something there. And they know there are people that will spend time with it, and maybe they have enough time to figure out monetization on that end.
Yeah.
But you decided to pick up sales now.
Yeah. Like horoscopes is one of those things where it sounds like something that is quite small, like comparatively. And like, of course, compared to sales as an industry, it's relatively small, but horoscopes and like star signs as an industry is huge in compared to what you think about it. Literally like half of the American population, half of the female American population truly believe in like astrology at some level. So essentially there's a huge market, and previous experience with digital marketing, I know that this is a target group that is also quite enthusiastic about Facebook and Facebook ads. So it was really just interesting, just, okay, try it and see what happens, right? But now it also comes to a point where like I'm a really analytical person, and okay, that might be why I thought it could be an interesting idea to pursue, but it's also why I don't think I could work on it for 10 years, right? When it comes to sales or something like this, it's really simple for me to understand how it's really important for the customers. It's really important. It's going to be important for the next 100 years, right? And I think you want to work on those types of problems.
Yeah, it's interesting and it's refreshing to hear like a founder talk about time range from 10 years. You first mentioned 10 years and I was like, oh wow, okay, that's a good enough like time frame. And then you say 100 years. A lot of like I would say founders and indie hackers and solopreneurs, they are just thinking, how can I get the first month and get to the next maybe 6 months and probably sell the product and just be like, peace, and go on to the next thing. So it's great to hear, thinking in terms of if a problem is valuable enough that you can dedicate the next 10 years, and it would last for, the next 100 years. So that's great. So I guess the latest problem that you're solving in sales would be that. Could you tell us a bit more about that, about what you're working on currently? That's the that's solving the really important problem.
Oh, excuse me. Of course. So essentially, like, we just started talking to a bunch of salespeople and trying to figure out kind of what problems are fundamental to sales but have not been solved, or the existing solution will be disrupted by AI, right? And like, it's a really interesting process, and like eventually, like, my mindset is that like pretty much everything will be disrupted at some level with AI. And if you think about like the time range, right? For the next 10 years, my guess is that what we will see mostly is kind of the same thing that we saw in self-driving cars. Self-driving cars is mostly solved problem, but it's depends on kind of how you define it and what you can use in terms of solving the problem. A lot of the really autonomous vehicles use like a combination of the cameras, sensors, and then you have satellite data and like combination of all types of things. And then you can make a really robust solution, at least for like cities and places where there are like a lot of data and you know that the road's going to be fine and these kinds of things. But it hasn't been like, most people on the road driving are still driving the cars themselves, even if Tesla has some autopilot feature and like that's becoming really mainstream. I think it's going to be kind of a similar development in AI. Like, there's a huge hype about AGI and that eventually like everything will be automated, and I think that's not the case. But I think it's all these places where it's kind of human augmented and you kind of need to have a bit of both sides is going to be kind of the most interesting spaces. And yeah, to your point about like where things are going, which we talked about a bit on the meetups and stuff, like from your side on like creating documentation for developers, like at some point there will be AI that does it, but it doesn't do it quite that well yet because it's not, no one has gone down and like built the proper solution for it to be domain specific and really make it approachable for developers, right?
Yeah, that's true. It would always be I like the term AI powered and AI informed, right? So at the crust of it, that's what it would eventually be, because we're humans. We will, transcend the current state of creativity and we'll create more. We'll always do better, right? And the best will always will stay at the forefront of innovation either
Yeah.
ways. And we would always be empowered by um, technology, same way we were empowered by electricity, same way we were empowered by the camera, to see better. That's the same way we'll be empowered by AI as well. That's what I think. Even as I run one of the easily, I would say, kicked out companies, if AI was to get really good. Could you tell me a bit more about Lunda? And you mentioned sales and the problems you saw. What's your current approach to solving this? I've been doing sales for the last 6-7 months, and I've spent a lot of time end to end, from lead sourcing all the way to prospecting, qualification, cold outreach, or even just converting inbound leads all the way to closing. And I know there's tons of problems and tons of manual processes, and all these, they need solutions. So which of them are you referring to? Which one are you tackling? And you don't have to share any business secrets here. You can just share what you think we should know, something generic, so someone else doesn't go build or try to build what you're working on.
So we're not really afraid of that exactly. So essentially, in any sales call, the salesperson will be talking to a prospect on video call, and we're targeting kind of both the situations where a company wants to decrease the on-ramp for a sales representative, meaning that it's the time from a salesperson starts their job until they are hitting targets and they're actually being an asset for the company. And we're targeting the cases where the salesperson has a product or offer that they're selling, where they themselves are not extremely technical, but they're selling to technical purchasers. And these two problems have kind of a lot of the same aspects, where the salesperson should have a coach or someone telling them exactly what the right thing to say. And it's kind of a long tail of different things that you just have to know to be able to answer the customer's question. And most kind of procurement processes are like this, where the salesperson needs to have more information, ideally, than the person who's purchasing, to be able to convey to them what is actually the best decision for them. So what we're building is a recommendation engine, where while you're on a call like this, it would give you suggestions based on what the customer is saying to you, so you can address their concerns or problems or their pain points, but also give you suggestions for how you can forward the conversation forward in the direction that you'd like. So it's really good, because I hear that you have a kind of perspective on sales, because we've seen on every part of the sales pipeline to see where are there opportunities, essentially. And prospecting, there's a lot of things that can be done there to kind of have this outreach place. There's a lot of interesting things happening there, where AI makes it so simple for anyone to have really personalized messages. So our prediction is that sales is going to become a lot more contact based. It's going to be based on who you know, and that you have a relationship with the person you're buying from, because it's not going to be sustainable if you're getting, even if it's super personalized and it hits exactly what you need, you still would like to talk with that person, because it's not going to be sustainable if you're sending emails to 100,000 person, each salesperson, right?
Yeah, you're right. And as you say this, I think about a conversation I had a couple of days ago with the head of marketing, Yulia, at an ABM company, so an account-based marketing company, and she mentioned something very similar. She's like, not in context of AI, but just generally, that account-based marketing or targeting accounts and building a marketing strategy and a supporting sales strategy around that will be the go-to method for teams to sell in the future. Because I can imagine at Hackmamba currently, we personalize sales like outreach messages, right? And we do it well. But then there's a lot of like, still loose like bolts and nuts here and there. It takes time. At some point, it's going to be very seamless. You could do those in tools that currently exist, and everyone would be able to do them. And you know what happens when everyone is able to do stuff, right? It becomes unoriginal. Like you get a personalized message. If you get a personalized message now, you feel like, oh, this person wrote it themselves, right? You don't feel like it's written by AI. But when everyone is able to do that, including those you send the message to, then I don't think it would be as valuable towards converting to new leads. So definitely going on like an account basis, influencing passively and reaching out like one-to-one eventually, that's going to be the way to sell, I think, in the future. How that will work at scale, because it's operation heavy, it's people heavy. I think about how would it scale if you need to reach 10,000 leads or contacts in a month, like any other large SaaS company, or even way more than that. How would they scale with people? I don't have insights to that, but that's a very good that's an insightful thought. And when you talk about Lunda and the problems you're solving, I'm experiencing that firsthand at the moment, right? And if you have like this solution, that's something I think I would use. And here's why: is I recently hired someone on our sales team, Wendy, fantastic, very smart. Our onboarding time has been like very quick, but there's a lot of knowledge that sits with me, right? I'm prospecting and qualifying leads, and I'm doing it in seconds. Like I go on like a landing page from the hero section, I already can tell if this company is ICP or not. And this is coming from 6-7 years of being like in the industry and knowing all these things. When I'm on a call with a prospect, right, and they have objections, I'm like quickly answering them from my experience from other sales calls. And also not just that, but also domain expertise that I have as a technical writer and a software engineer. I know what software engineers care about. I know what technical writing teams care about. I'm able to answer on the fly, right? But with Andy, for now, and just about any other person that joins his team, they need at least, mentally, I know they need at least 3 to 6 months. Even that is even like best case scenario to get up to speed. And even at that, because they aren't domain experts, so they are not technical writers. They are still salespeople, even though they are like really great. They're really great salesperson. They are just not a technical writer, and they could get an objection that could be like make or break for the prospect, and you just cannot answer it on the call. The best case, I mean, what we'll hear these days is they'll say, you know what, I'm going to take this question down, I'm going to ask my team, and then I'll let you know. But even that's like too long. that's too long of a time if you already know what to say on the call. So I think that's a very valuable problem.
It's exactly as you said, like, and you'll hear this a lot from sales managers that all they want to do is like shrink their sales cycle. Because if you're able to shrink the sales cycle, not only is it better for the customer because like you actually get what you want, either you decide that this is not the right vendor, or you decide this is great, we're going to move forward. And if you do that, then all your sales representatives have more time to allocate to new customers. But underlyingly, like if you would have had Lunda for the past years where you have been working with Hackmamba and building documentation, you could have had every single sales conversation indexed by our software. So when your new salesperson starts selling for you, it already has all the data for how to handle the different objections. So it would actually be like you have Mini William guiding his new sales rep, but for every single call. For us, it's like, it's a really interesting perspective, and the reason why it hasn't been built is just the AI hasn't been there yet, but now it is.
Yeah, and I would think it can only get better with time, because I think about like shortcomings for this is usually when I join calls with salespeople as the expert, and they ask, like the prospect asks some complex question, I'm able to chime in like instantly to respond, or like even like maybe cut them halfway and respond. But with AI, I think, how do you see that happening? Because of like latency, it has to think, it has to process input and then spit out something. So
Yeah.
maybe you're probably like solving that problem or thinking about solutions for that. But how do you see that evolving currently, and how big of a problem is it?
I mean, we think it's possible to get to a point where it answers it live, and essentially, if you really wanted to, the salesperson could just read up from their screen and have like a teleprompter, but it's probably not the direction that we want to go. We think the most kind of important part is to empower the salesperson to have the information that they need to actually talk to the prospect and have the information needed. Because like you mentioned earlier, like how it really sucks for the salesperson to tell the prospect that, no, I'll let you know about this, I'll speak to my team, blah, blah. But it is really not that great for the customer either, right? So we think that this like information giving aspect is probably the most human part, and the one that will just I like your terms that you used about kind of AI augmented or like AI informed, or I think this is kind of the direction that we'll be in, and the paradigm that we'll be in for like at least quite some years. And then you'll have a lot of places where it goes fully autonomous. But sales is one of those places where it is unlikely to, because it's a lot better and a lot simpler to talk to someone and hear their conviction. That's the way that you make the purchasing decision, right?
Yeah, that's true. Folks tell you, at least folks that have sold for decades, they tell you just pick up the phone, just call someone, like speak to them on the phone. And that's something I've started learning a lot in Norway. Is folks are pretty like old school here. They just call you. They just call you on the phone. If you want to listen, fine. If you don't, that's okay. They move on. And
but it's hilarious too, because in Norway people are so afraid to pick up the phone. But actually, if you look at the cold calling metrics in Norway, it's some of the best in Europe.
I figured, because I still get a lot of cold calls. If it wasn't working, I wouldn't be getting all those calls from Talk More, trying to sell me like a new GSM plan every time. I haven't gotten a call from like a SaaS company. Maybe they are not like the ones calling. It's mostly like GSM companies that do those cold calls. But personally, I want to start calling people, because I'm like, yeah, I get called. Maybe I should just start calling people as well and talk to them about buying our services and helping, shorten their time to integration and stuff like that. So you did mention you spoke to a lot of customers, right? Or you spoke to a lot of potential customers and a lot of users. As an engineer, how did you go about that? How did you go about that shift from, okay, I'm not going to be slapping like my keyboard for 12 hours a day. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to speak to customers, or I'm going to speak to users, potential users, and learn what they want and uncover what you're going to eventually build. How did you make that shift?
So there's just a lot of credit to Emil, who's my co-founder on Lunda, because he's been working as a product manager for many, many years. Last company he worked for was Whips, and he has like an unwavering drive to understand the customer and where there is kind of customer value. So just in the first 5 weeks that we worked on this, we had over 50 like sales interviews with salespeople. Some of them were the same people, but we followed up with them. And he's just been a madman in terms of just following up and trying to figure out where there is value. And a lot of the things that you explore and you have a hypothesis on can be valuable will turn out it's absolutely not valuable at all. It's like no reason to pursue it at all. And a lot of things that you have intuition about as well will also be just completely wrong. But eventually, like if you talk to enough customers, you'll kind of get what they mean. And like a lot of the times when you talk to a customer, they will say they have one problem, but actually they have another, right? It's just that they're like stuck in their own kind of mindset and brain about how things should work, right? So like the short answer is just have amazing co-founder who will really, really help you to just talk to more people. But it also is, it's really difficult to build a tech product if you're not talking to your end users. It's not possible, right? So for me, it's been a really test in patience in terms of like, I just want to sit and really like build things. That's what I fell in love with at first, but you must figure out as a programmer, especially, that like your code isn't actually valuable. It's that your code gets used.
That's a good one. Your code isn't valuable. It's that your code gets used. That's what's valuable.
Yeah.
I
bet you
follow like forget that.
Oh, definitely. I bet you follow like Peter Levels on Twitter, right?
Don't we all? I guess. Don't we all? We all need like 50K plus MRR a month, like MRR. So I guess we all follow Levels for sure.
I mean, it's just like if you look at the technology that he's building, it's not extremely impressive in terms of like technical, fancy, whatever. But it's not what's important either. It's that you like ship a product that people want to use. And yeah, he has some cool case studies now with both the interior AI generator and photo AI generator. He did share his metrics about his retention, and that makes you not so envious about his projects, I think. But either way, it's really cool to see. And I think this is something that you probably have some thoughts about too, about how it's really incredible to work in a time where people are sharing their work so openly.
Yeah. I wish it was well-rounded, right? So both the folks that are succeeding share stuff and the folks that are not actually share stuff. That would even be better, because I learned a long time ago that it could actually be derailing and demoralizing if you see only the good stuff. So you only see like folks sharing like their monthly recurring revenues and they're actually making money. I have a hypothesis that at least 80% of indie creators do not make a dime from their projects. And I'm still unable to prove it, but this is just me thinking, because I see a lot of people try to build stuff. I hear a lot of ideas and I'm like, okay, this is great, but your approach is different. I see a lot of people build stuff, they haven't thought about distribution. I see a lot of people build products, they haven't even gone to like done like a Google search to find out if there are like competitors out there. I mean, sometimes it pays off to just be naive and build something to solve your problems, or you just build it and you're lucky and you get traction, right? But a lot of times people build stuff, doesn't work, we hear nothing about it. They just lick their wounds and go on to like something else, maybe get a job, right? Like do something else. So it's great to share stuff, to share wins and successes. That's amazing. But I feel it would also be really impactful if folks could share their failures just as well. Like we get a really balanced view of, entrepreneurship and indie hacking. I respect like a lot of people when I go on Twitter, for instance, and I see someone is having like a tough day, or they're like, no, this is not like, it's really not working. Right. And maybe under it, I see someone celebrating their product hunt launch and how they've gotten like how many new users and sessions. I feel like, yin and yang, things are moving really well that way. So yeah, I would like folks to keep sharing wins, but at the same time, I want to see like lessons, and I don't see failures. I just see lessons, right? So I want to see those lessons, more of those lessons being shared. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good take, and it would be more interesting to kind of read a bit of like the failure stories. Then again, it's kind of the problem is that like a lot of the like lessons that you can learn from starting a project and then having see it fail are not necessarily applicable to the next thing that you're gonna do. So it's kind of interesting, and I'm guessing that's why like you don't have like the next like most powerful like Twitter influencer in the tech space being like really great about sharing all their failures, right? Is because it can be extremely valuable, like that simple thread about like, let's say the horoscope thing. If there was someone building like a horoscope like project and that's like super passionate and that's what they want to do, because then it would be so simple to see all the places that there are potential problems, and then if you don't have solutions to those problems, then you are unlikely to succeed, right? It's the same as
you're very correct.
Like no investor wants to talk to a startup that hasn't done any research about who has basically gone and tried this before and haven't succeeded. They always feel like, okay, they did this. What do you think you're gonna solve that they couldn't, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the reasons I talked to Henok at Startup Lab. If he eventually sees this someday, is that's the one question he always asks: is the folks that have done this before you, why didn't they succeed? They had like money, they had traction, but they failed. Why would it be you? Like, why would you succeed this time around? So, and then ever since that, like even first conversations I had with him, and I was able to like clearly articulate failure like reasons. So if I have an idea, and I'm like, this is a glaring idea, like it should be built already. I start to ask myself, why hasn't it been built? Like, why has no one? It's like, I mean, as a founder too, you get like this bias internally that this is going to change the world. This is like the idea that will, go next level. But then you ask yourself, like, I mean, folks should have tried. Idea generators should have generated this idea too, and someone tried to build it and probably failed. But you don't hear nothing. Like you don't hear anything about it. I have an example. There's this idea of having like an all-in-one co-working, co-living like space in one place, right? I mean, it sounds great, right? It sounds like you have like this hotel or like something that looks like a hotel. Indie hackers and creators can just go in there, they live there, work there. You work on the 8th floor, you live on the 2nd floor, stuff like that. And you're like, this is a great idea, right? You work with you live with people like you, and it makes sense. And then I've always been thinking about it for years, for like maybe 5-8 years since I went to some place and saw something almost similar. And I've been thinking, why hasn't this been replicated elsewhere? And then recently I listened to a podcast. It's My First Million. And someone mentioned, I think it was WeWork, that attempted something like that and it failed. They had like an establishment in New York or something, and they tried the same thing and it didn't work. I think that's the podcast that killed the idea in my head. It was like if Newman had like all that money, all that influence, the reach, they had the setup, but yeah, it didn't work for them. Who am I? Like, I mean, it's not thinking little of myself. It's just I don't know. I don't know what I would do better, right? While having like so much less leverage than they did.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, VCs are kind of interesting in the sense that they have essentially 50 questions, and every VC will ask you one of those 50 questions. And if you know the answers to them, not only is it a good test for your business to see if like, is it a venture capital kind of case, but also like, it's kind of like you have to convince yourself too that you're having a great idea, because it's easy to convince yourself that it isn't, and you're really underselling yourself, and you're just like demotivating. but also it's really simple to have the delusion of grandeur, right? And like the only way to kind of prove that things are working is to sell things to customers, right? And actually talk to them.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's the question, right? How many people did you get to join your co-living space?
Yeah, for me, 0. They're all just in my head. Speaking of people and, I mean, co-living and co-working and communities, I joined, I started like, it was you and Lars. Oh, I think it was just Lars co-organizing like the Oslo AI, like organizing the Oslo AI product meetup. And then we both joined at the same time to help co-organize. So what piqued your interest and why did you like decide to, contribute to like a community and AI community, and even like co-organize one instead of just being like a regular participant?
Well, it's mostly because I know Lars from before, and also because like Oslo is actually it has a really good like AI scene and a lot of people who are doing really interesting things, and it's kind of a bit underappreciated. So for me, it was kind of like, okay, seems interesting. My friend is doing it, but also there have been really, really good conversations from those meetups about how you approach things, how can you solve different issues, and like there are extremely like even like if you're living in a random part of the world, like there could literally be someone with your exact interests living not far from you. You just don't know that person, but it's a likelihood that this person will attend some meetup related to their interest, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Like it's funny because my dad was going to like concert that he is a big fan of outside of Oslo, and he met someone there, and then it turns out that that person lives literally across the road from him, but they have just never met. And that's the nature of just cities, right? It's the same with like the meetup or just in general, like organizing. And you have like even greater experience in this as well. Like you never know what people actually are interested in and like how like big the world in this sense. So I would like really recommend people to get engaged in the things that they're interested in, because it will give you so much like fulfillment, but also just you don't know like even like AI product lab, like you would think that it's not that many people who are really interested in product development and like creating great products and AI who also live in Oslo, which is not that big of a city, but there are quite a lot of us.
Yeah, they are. With communities, I just love the fact that they expose you to the unknown unknowns. So the things you do not know that you don't know. That's what you find, right? It's that you come there, like you meet amazing people. You meet people building stuff, folks that might be thinking about the same things you were working on, but from like a different like approach that you would otherwise not think about, right? And basically we also get like free beer and like free we get free pizza and drinks to go. And for anyone listening from Oslo, we have the next one. It's next week, right? It's next Thursday, Wednesday, the 13th.
And we just confirmed earlier as well that Emil, who is my co-founder, who's done a lot of work in generative images and AI, will be speaking, and it's going to be a really, really great talk because he's one of the most skilled people in generative AI in Oslo.
Yeah, that's great. I'm personally like looking forward to that one. I'm sure we're going to make it like it's going to be even better than the last one, which was really good. Yeah, it's just gonna definitely it's gonna keep getting better and better. Speaking of better and better, how do you see AI getting better and better? I mean, we're seeing like video models. Are we going to go like multimodal or we're going to go like deep? What are your thoughts with that?
I mean, I think it's a lot of like different ideas, and that's why AI is such an interesting space at the moment. Like, there are so many people trying to model out what's the right mental model to see how AI is going to develop, but also kind of which parts is necessary for it. And I think there are a few kind of interesting ideas and concepts in the space currently. The first is that, like, okay, the LLMs might be some sort of engine where you can have logic reasoning. Currently, they're not so sophisticated in logic, because if you start asking math problems to ChatGPT, you'll have quite some issues, right? But it's quite good at writing code, especially things that are well documented and have Hackmamba documentation, for example.
Yeah.
But there really is something interesting to that. And then you see that, okay, Sora, which is the new like video model, is not only video necessarily, because you see that they have really quite good physics in it as well somehow. Like, if you see the videos, like, the physics seem to add up for the most part. So like, my guess is that you will see like more types of models and more of the like problem spaces being solved. So like, before OpenAI and like LLMs became the like super hyped crazy thing, you kind of thought more about AI as like specific like models, and you didn't hear so much about foundational models, right? It was more about like voice recognition. It's one set of problems in this box, and like that's where the focus is going to be. My guess would be that you're going to kind of see this development, and you're going to see, okay, image generation is one of the things that's like really come far along. Video generation is going to go like even better. You're going to have sound generation at some point, which there probably is already, just it's not become quite mainstream. You have narration models that are really, really good. Like, the progression here is just that at some point you will have all the pieces which make up like an artificial kind of general entity, right? And one of the main things that I think it's missing is this action, like being able to do actions in a browser on a computer. I think that's the key part that is going to essentially change everything, because if the reasoning engine that you have is actually good and it is able to do proper reasoning, which like, if you follow the things that are happening within like the top AI companies, like, it's quite likely that it will. It just depends on how much compute you need to use to make it cost effective to actually run. Then the next step is just that you need to be able to make it act in the like real world through a robot, right? Or through the digital work through a browser or through an API. So I think like, if you're able to reason and you're able to browse the internet, like, my guess is that the core of like Baby AGI and like all these like projects that have been on GitHub, if you just improve the LLM within them, and then you make a better interface for doing actions more dynamically, being able to see the web pages through an image model, like, there is something really interesting here, which will probably come in the next like 5 years.
Yeah. 5 years? If you're taking bets or if you're placing bets, would you say 5 years?
I think it's unreasonable to say more than 5 years. And it's probably not going to come as soon as people think. But then again, it's like, you probably see like the predictions about AI, like before GPT 3.5, the prediction was like 80 years. And then when GPT-4 came out, it's like 30 years. And then like, it just goes down and down and down really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Basically, like, since GPT like 4 came out, and then like Gemini and like Llama and like all these things, like, now they're saying that like this is really imminent, because you can see the timeline, and the timeline just keeps shortening. So I would guess like 5 years is a very reasonable bet to take. Like, it might come out like Monday and you don't know, right?
Yeah, I think these days I just look forward to like the monthly releases from any of like the big AI like companies is if Google has an announcement this week, I'm expecting something to come from OpenAI next week
Yeah.
and something even better, right? So for us, observing, right, mostly being like on backseat, not actually like developing these models. It's really fun to see. I think we are coming up around time. Do you have any other thing you want to chip in?
No, I think it's been a cool conversation about just about everything AI, and
Mhm.
I think like one of the things that might have been highlighted in a previous episode of yours is how you're getting to learn to fly and getting your pilot's license.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I don't know, live my dreams, I would say. Yeah, that's the short way of saying it without sounding very inspirational. But yeah, I
Yeah,
just had an idea that I want to learn to fly. And I said, yeah, I'll just do it.
nice.
That's it. That's it, really.
It's totally unrelated, but I think it's just a really cool thing. And kind of like what made you inspired to do that?
I guess every young boy always one time looked up and saw like a plane and be like, damn, I wish I could like, fly plane sometime. I also did that when I was like 6, 7. That
Yeah,
and becoming like a news anchor. And my
yeah.
dad was like, no, you're not going to be like a newscaster because they don't get paid a lot. It's like, you're not doing that because they don't get paid like a lot of money. And he's like, yeah, being a pilot, maybe you would get paid really well for that someday. But I always like was fascinated about that. And I like to travel. So it felt like an outlet. If I eventually am able to fly myself, I can go anywhere on a
Yeah,
moment's notice. So yeah, I figured as soon as I moved to Oslo and I felt a bit more settled and I wasn't like nomading anymore and like roaming around, felt like it was the next thing to do as like a pastime activity as a hobby. So yeah, that's why I'm hobby flying at the moment.
that's really awesome. It sounds like it's
Yeah.
like we have to do something when the AI is gone. So you might as well just fly around and enjoy yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I can't help but think, for instance, that if for any reason uh there's a model that does what Hack Mamba does, right? And we're unable to help teams create original creative content, which I don't think is going to get replaced anytime soon, right? But there's this thought. It's like, what if I wake up tomorrow morning and it's like, hey, you just install this plugin and your whole like your product is documented and it can generate something can generate like support content on the fly, generate like original blog posts in your voice, like it's in your head. And this is like months from now. What do I
Mm.
do? Like, yeah, I don't know. I'll probably just find a farm and then become a pilot, become a pilot for a while to get enough money. I do that for a living then. But yeah, I've always like, just had that like slight thought. But until then, we'll build an even better solution so we're AI powered. That's what I actually think.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
sick. Really cool speaking to you, man.
Yeah, same as always. I'm going to see you. I mean, sometime maybe we should have this in person, since you're
Yeah,
in Oslo and I'm in Oslo as well, instead of over the phone. But this was an amazing conversation, and I do not see any questions in the chat, but I see Martin. This one's to you, man. Um, but this has been an amazing conversation. I think we're going to have one more in maybe 6 months' time to see like the progress of Lunda, and probably by then I should be a customer as well as
Wait,
I hire and bring on people,
yeah,
to help us out.
we'll definitely set that up. There is actually
Yeah.
like a really bare bones like opt-in page, which is just lunda.ai. But
Hmm.
right now we're just taking the manual people that we've spoken to, so we'll get you on the list.
Oh, so it's like exclusive. I have to get on the list. Yeah, I feel good. I'd put me on the list, man. that's that's something for sure. But I'll be happy
Um,
to test it out to try it.
Currently, we have limited capacity, so we're only allowing one person from each company to use it.
Wow, you even go like further, not just the company, but just one person in the company. But
You got to do what you
for
got to
anyone
do.
listening, true, man, I respect that. But for anyone listening, check out learn.ai, especially sales teams and sales managers out there. And yeah, we'll call it a wonderful evening from this side of the north. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And see you next week.
Bye, guys. Thanks, William.
Yep.